only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog and join the Progressive Army.
One of the most difficult things to do is to recognize that you have been propagandized, to recognize that you have been coded with programming that makes you desensitized to all of the violence of the police state perpetrated against Black lives, against Black men, against Black women, against Black LGBTQ people, against against all human beings of any race. We have become desensitized to it, but yet we recoil in terror at the sight of buildings burning. This weekend, a Wendy's burned down in Atlanta, Georgia, in response to the police shooting of Rayshard Brooks, 27-year-old Black man who was killed by APD June 12th. He had been sleeping in a drive-thru waiting to get his order at Wendy's, and he fell asleep. He had been out partying and drinking. Video has surfaced, dash cam video or body cam footage, as well as cell phone footage that shows that he explained to them, yes, I have been drinking. Yes, I'm just trying to get home. That's all I'm trying to do. And after about a 30-minute conversation, things escalated from a peaceful interaction to an all-out brawl. And Rayshard Brooks ran off with the taser of one of the police officers, turned around, pointed the taser at the police officers. The police officers unloaded their guns in his back. The police officer involved has been fired from APD, as well as the chief of police here in the city has resigned. She stepped down. And here we are yet again showing on full display that these police have not learned a thing. They have not learned. In fact, they are doubling down on the stranglehold that they want to keep on the cities across this country. They want to assert their dominance. They want to be the dominating force in every single city that forces the people into acquiescence. They want you to respect them. They want you to capitulate to them. They want you to kiss their boots in order for you to get home safely. Plenty of us have been in circumstances very similar to Rayshard Brooks, coming home after a night of being out, partying, sitting in a drive-thru, trying to get something to make sure that you sober up just enough more. Let's call a spade a spade. Yes, drunk driving is bad. DUI is bad. A lot of people are killed by it, and he should not have been driving under the influence, but that is not a reason for him to have been killed. Hell, that's barely a reason for him to have he was sleeping. He was trying to sleep it off. Now tell me, anybody in the audience who has not had a night out where you're sitting in your car trying to sleep off the alcohol or trying to get some food before you take the drive home, tell me that you've never done that, and I'll show you a person who is lying or a person who is afraid of living. No, you don't have to. Drinking doesn't mean that you're living, but you understand what I'm saying. It is commonplace in this country. And there's two disturbing things that have come from this. It has shown that the police have not learned a damn thing, that they are doubling down on their willingness to shoot and kill Black men and women in circumstances where they would never kill a white person. How many times have white underage drinkers been given a ride home because they were drunk, right? And, Jim Bob, Jim likes to go out and drink every weekend and every now and then, so we just give him a ride home, or we just let him sleep there in the truck until he they make so many exceptions. And so, number one, the police should never have been called on this man in the first place unless he was an imminent threat to someone else. He was sleeping. Number two, if you can't handle a fist fight with a man, two cops can't handle a fist fight with a man who's under the influence, he's intoxicated. You know how easy it is to knock out a drunk man? I mean, what if you can't handle an altercation with a drunk man, then you don't need to be a cop. Let's just call a spade a spade. The easiest people in the world to knock out are people who are drunk. But I digress. So the police have not learned anything. In fact, they are asserting, they are doubling down on their ability to control the Black community in particular, poor communities of any color. And they won't take this type of barbarity to white neighborhoods. But if you're a white person who will come from behind your gated community and come and protest on our behalf, then yeah, you can get the business too. Police will crack your skull all the same if you dare come into their police state and try to assert all those liberties that you have in your lily white, safe, comfortable, middle class, upper middle class, rich class neighborhoods. That's the dynamics of American politics. But the thing that bothers me the most are how many people are willing to excuse this murder because he resisted arrest. Because it's almost as if people are looking for a way to say, okay, in this circumstance, it's okay for the police to kill a black man. In this circumstance, that's totally justified when we have countless examples, video after video, of police officers having all-out battles for their life with white people and not killing them. Now, that's not categorical. One of the most disturbing videos I have ever seen in my 6 years of doing this, one of the most difficult to cover, second only to the Freddie Gray, not Freddie Gray, but see, there's so many names, you mix them up, to the George Floyd. The George Floyd video by far was the worst because you had a close-up look. You had a close-up look at a man's soul leaving his body, all while a police officer with a giddy expression on his face killed him. But second only to that is the killing of a white 27-year-old man by the name of Daniel Shaver. I covered this years ago on the broadcast, somewhere around 2016, 2017. And you saw a man, Daniel Shaver, on his knees, pleading for his life, crawling on his knees, crying, saying that I don't want to die. You saw him executed by a police officer who was later acquitted and was able to retire with his full pension. So it is the case that there are so many examples of police officers showing an inordinate amount of restraint with white people and having zero tolerance for black resistance of any kind. While we do have plenty of evidence to that fact, it has to be stated that there have been white people who have been brutally assassinated by our police state. And yet I bring it up because white folks only really, too many of you, I'm sorry, but there are too many white people who only bring up white killings by police officers when they can leverage it against black lives. You don't care. You do not care when white people are gunned down in the streets. The homeless man in Albuquerque, New Mexico, who was sleeping at a bus stop in an open carry state, he had a BB gun. But when the police approached him, he was sleeping at a bus stop and the police came up with 6 officers, all with their assault rifles, and he got killed, gunned down. Somebody mentioned it to me on Twitter. They put it like this: a certain number of white people are going to have to be sacrificed to protect white supremacy. And that is the case. But as I began this episode, I want to double down on this. It is the propagandization of American thought that is the most powerful weapon that they are using to protect the police state. Because for anybody to sit around and to be more concerned with the fact that a Wendy's burned down in response to the police shooting of Rayshard Brooks, or anybody who's going to take the time to try to find a way to say, okay, in this instance, it was okay for the police officers to kill him. The man was running. They had his car, they had his license plate, they had his face, they had video of him. There was nothing that man could do to get away from the police in the long run. He was running and they shot him in the back. But people are trying to find a way to justify it. Some black people, for that matter. And that is the result of your programming. The American government is the most proficient propagandization machine on the face of the planet. We have been indoctrinated from birth to always give more concern to buildings, to always recoil in terror at the sight of buildings burning. We are desensitized to the number of black people we have videos of. Like, we've seen them so many times, we're not even moved by it. But if you see a building burning, oh my goodness, it is a breakdown in society. Meanwhile, you lack that response to black lives being killed by police. That is because America needs you to value property more than you value life. America needs you to value property more than you value life because of how America got that property through taking lives, through enslaving lives, through exploiting lives, through pillaging and plundering lives. They need you to value property more than life because if you ever put the value of life above property, you would be ready to burn this place down too. And they had to indoctrinate you. And so you recoil in terror when you see a building burning. And you say things like, oh, this is not the solution. The hell it isn't. America can ignore you. America will ignore you so long as you happily go to City Hall and get a permit to have X number of protesters show up and march on this side of the street. Don't go into the street, but march on this side of the street during these allotted hours and make sure that you pay for police overtime to be there to escort you. And that way they have complete control and dominance over your protest. Your protest means nothing if it does not bring fear into the heart of elected officials and this power structure. Your protest means absolutely nothing. It is a signifier. If you are complying with all of the demands of the government, then that means that your protest is perfectly sanctioned by this government. So be a good American. Be a good American who draws a line at property, and you never drew the line at lives. Be a good American, because so long as they have you terrified of a building burning, and have you completely desensitized to the number of lives that it took for them to get that building in the first place, then you are never a threat. No matter how many marches you have, no matter how many times you sing Kumbaya, no matter how many rallies you have, no matter how much you protest with cops marching by your side, if they can sanction and sanitize your protest and keep it under control, then you will never get any change in this country, period. Robert Fuller is a 24-year-old black man. He was found dead hanging from a tree in Palmdale, California. According to County Sheriff's Department, they say it was a suicide, but the family and his friends, the family of Robert Fuller and his friends are pushing back against that narrative. They are saying that it was most certainly a lynching. The police have rushed to categorize this as a suicide. And this is not the only hanging that we've seen. There have been several hangings all in the same proximity over the last couple of weeks. And it is difficult. Black men and women understand the symbolism of hanging from a tree. And it is not to say that black people are not capable of committing suicide. We do have suicides in the black community, obviously. It doesn't have to be stated, but I will say it. There are struggles with depression in the black community that often go undiscussed because we don't discuss mental health issues vocally in the black community. That paradigm is changing, thankfully. But hanging oneself from a tree, it's embedded in every black person's mind exactly what that symbolizes and what that means across the country. Setting that line of reasoning aside, I want to read a couple of paragraphs from NPR as they spoke to the sister of Robert Fuller. And at a rally, this is NPR reporting, quote, at a rally near the tree where the brother's body was found, Fuller's sister, Diamond Alexander, expressed her skepticism that he committed suicide and said her family still had unanswered questions. Quote, we really want to find out the truth of what happened, said Alexander, choking up while speaking about her brother's death. It's like everything that they've been telling us is not right, has not been right. Fuller's death reverberated around Palmdale and much of the region. The city is part of the Antelope Valley, a metropolitan area which transformed from a majority white community into a racially diverse exurb in recent decades. The shift has not been without tensions. Neo-Nazi groups have been reported in the area. There have also been Justice Department actions over alleged discriminatory housing and policing practices in Palmdale and the neighboring city of Lancaster. You know, I have to say this. There are people whose reaction to this is to say that black folks don't kill themselves. That's not true. We do. We have problems with depression. We seriously do. I just don't think many black folks are killing themselves, hanging themselves on a tree. Not in the fashion of a lynching. And this is what we're seeing happening. I think we're up to like 4, 2 of which are in Southern California. Very close to each other. Last month, the body of Malcolm Harsh, he was 38. He was also found hanging from a tree in Victorville, California. And again, in that case, police officers are calling it, and sheriff's officers are calling it a suicide, quickly labeling it a suicide. Now, I'm willing to consider the possibility of suicide because shit is hard out here. People are really struggling. This is a very difficult time in our society. It's difficult economically. It's difficult and based on racism. It's difficult because of COVID-19. So I can't preclude the possibility of a suicide. But at the same time, when you see the racial dynamics of this country at this present moment with the white supremacist in chief in the White House, when you see the uptick in white supremacist violence across the country, when you see the reaction to the protests by Donald Trump supporters and conservatives across this country, waving the Confederate flag and talking and coming out with violent rhetoric as well as violent actions. And so for the policing agencies to immediately rule it as a suicide is, I want to call it irresponsible, but in a way, it's intentional. It's intentional because you cannot look at the climate. You cannot look at what's happening in the world around us and rule out the possibility that this was a lynching. You cannot do that in good faith, not with the racist environment, the uptick in racist violence that we've seen across this country. Ahmaud Arbery was lynched. In this case, they shot him to death instead of hanging him from a tree. And it's not a surprise that the police officers and sheriff's deputies in these cases would try to wash this away and just declare it to be a suicide, because they don't want to consider the possibility. They are intentionally ignoring the possibility that this was not a suicide, but a lynching. And that's because some of their buddies are probably the ones in these neo-Nazi organizations, the KKK. Don't get it twisted. The FBI has already released data showing that white supremacist organizations have infiltrated law enforcement at every single level. So why would they investigate themselves? It's easier to just call it a suicide. All right, this is extremely tragic and infuriating news coming out of Tallahassee, Florida. This voice that you're getting ready to hear is that of a young black woman who was killed. Her body was found, and she was killed, which appears, based on her tweets, her last few tweets, it was sexual assault involved with it, and killed by a black man who has been arrested. This is the voice of, and I'm sure I'm going to pronounce it incorrectly, but I want to give it a try. Oluwatoyin Salu. Online they're saying justice for Toyin, Toyin. But listen to her passion and her conviction, and then let's talk about it.
Nah, can't nobody silence me. I just want, it's not that all lives don't matter, but right now, our lives matter. Black lives matter.
Yes.
Black trans lives matter.
Yes.
Trans lives matter.
Yes.
Because guess what? We all minorities, but right now, like, let's focus on the person who got killed. Tony McDade was a black trans man. Okay?
Amen.
We're not doing this. We doing this for him. We doing this for our brothers and our sisters who got shot, but we doing this for every black person. Because at the end of the day, I cannot take my fucking skin color off. I cannot mask this shit, okay? Everywhere I fucking go, I'm profiled whether I like it or not.
That ain't right.
Like, I'm looked at whether I like it or not.
According to her own timeline, she was molested by a black man, and I'm stating it as a matter of fact, but also for a reason that I will expound on in a moment. The thing that disturbs me about this, above and beyond the fact that she was sexually assaulted and killed, was what led to her sexual assault and murder, was that she was left vulnerable, that she was out there without anywhere to stay. She was homeless. She was out protesting on behalf of Black lives. And I don't know if anybody knew or who all knew or how many people knew that while she was out there protesting on our behalf, that she herself had nowhere to stay. This is one of her tweets. She said, quote, anyways, I was molested in Tallahassee, Florida by a black man this morning at 5:30 on Richview and Park Avenue. The man offered to give me a ride to find some place to sleep and to recollect my belongings from a church I refuged to a couple of days back to escape unjust living conditions. So she was marginally housed. And there she was fighting on behalf of Black lives, fighting against the police state. And I don't know who knew, if anyone knew, or how many people knew that she herself had nothing and that she was left vulnerable. 5:30 in the morning, walking, trying to find somewhere to stay. And now she's dead. She's dead not only because of some evil predator who sexually assaulted her and then killed her, but she's also dead because the entire everything, the entire system, the entire structure of our society, the fact that she could be out there protesting on behalf, and we got celebrity activists who are sitting back on millions of dollars. There should not be a single person out there who is an activist, who's working on our behalf, who is marginally housed and left vulnerable. That is not acceptable. When all these dollars are being poured into these agencies, and again, I don't know who knew. I don't know how many people knew. But if one person knew, shame on them. And shame on all of us for allowing our system to be such that some of us can get rich from activism and others are left homeless, marginally housed, and vulnerable to be taken advantage of and be preyed upon by the worst monsters in our society. There should not be such a thing. And it's difficult. What I was getting ready to say is there should not be such a thing as celebrity activists and activists who have millions upon millions. I mean, million filthy rich. You guys are out here with millions of dollars. And there are activists who are hungry. And it's kind of the nature of the beast. I get it. People kind of swarm around particular figures and they uplift those particular figures. But that's why those figures have to have integrity and actually be concerned about humanity and the people. What the hell am I saying? What I'm saying is, if they are pouring millions of dollars into you, then you need to be pouring millions of dollars back into the people. You got to be pouring this money back into the people. You have to be, so that there's never another instance of a person protesting on our behalf who doesn't have a fucking place to stay, walking the streets of Tallahassee, Florida at 5:30 in the morning, to be left, to be taken, to be preyed upon by a predator. I don't care what color, race, sex, gender. I don't care what the identity of the predator was. This one was a black man. He doesn't get a shield around him because he was a black man. Fuck him. Think I care? You think there's you think that there would be a shift in my voice or in my anger because he's a black man like I'm a black man? When he murders a child who is out there fighting on his behalf? I'm not as good as the people who are prison abolitionists. I'm not as good as people who would look at this kind of situation and be against the death penalty. I'm not. I'm not that good, because predators who prey on the most vulnerable in our society. Let me stop. But I also need us. This is what I need. I need us to demand that we take care of our own. That when a person is out there volunteering and sacrificing themselves on our behalf, and they're out there marginally housed, homeless, without food, without care, without shelter, by themselves, she was protesting for us, and she was alone. Never, ever, ever, ever allow this to happen again. Check on everybody. Check on everybody. Check on everybody. You don't even have to know them. Check on them. Just as a matter of routine, just normalize, just asking, are you okay? Do you have what you need? And it doesn't take a lot. I mean, we probably have about $1 billion floating around in the quote unquote activist community with all of these fundraisers, with all these millionaires and billionaires donating money. There's probably every bit of $1 billion in this movement. There should not be a single I'm going to talk about this at great length in a few minutes because I'm running out of time. But there should not be a single person in this movement who does not have a place to stay. There should not be a single person in this movement who is left alone to be preyed upon by predators. There is enough money. What are we doing? What are we doing? Why are some of us living in the lap of luxury and some of us are walking the streets at 5:30 in the morning in Tallahassee, Florida to be preyed upon by a predator? I am the most aggrieved by y'all. Sis was alone. Our little sister was alone by herself. A young woman, a young black woman who had spent her days fighting for us. And at the end of the night, nobody was there to fight for her. That. God damn it, man. I just want to stress again that in all that we do, let's just make it a habit, because we never know whose life it could save. Let's make it a habit of checking on everybody. I don't have a lot. All I have is what my patrons give me, to be quite honest with you. That's it. That's literally all I have. And I'm not saying this to boost myself. I otherwise would not say it. But the reason I'm going to say it is because I would never ask you to do something that I don't do myself. Every single month, I give to people. I did that shit before I even had money, man. Before I even had patrons enough to sustain it. I just do it because what good is this? What good is this money? What good is this money if you're not helping people? What good is any of this? Like, I literally do not understand hoarding wealth. It literally does not make sense to me. And I know that there's people in my family, and, I'm sure my wife would like for me to change that a little bit. At least hoard enough wealth to have a decent savings account. I get that. But for me, it's like, if I have, you have. If I have, I've got no as long as I got enough money to pay my bills, then I'm looking for somebody else to help. And this is not to boost me. This is because we just need to boost that spirit. We need everybody to do this. Give to somebody who has less. Take care of somebody. As we try to change this system so that this doesn't happen. I know that we cannot fix homelessness with just our dollars. We're not billionaires. Most of you are not millionaires. Hell, I'm not a millionaire. I'm barely a thousandaire. So I know we don't have enough resources to fix this on our own. That's why we fight so hard against this system, to make sure that as we fight this system, that we are structuring a society that will not leave people vulnerable. So we have to change it at a systemic level, but that doesn't preclude our responsibility of doing it on an individual level. I've given I've given $75 to somebody when I had $150 in my account. Okay? So it doesn't matter how much you have. It's not about what you have, it's about what you're willing to do with what you have. And this hoarding spirit, this wealth hoarding is not just a problem of billionaires. It's also a problem of some of us in these spaces. Some of us podcasters, some of us YouTubers, some of us celebrity activists, some people in my orbit. Just wasted wealth. To do what? To do what? To buy a new email list with? Like what? What are we doing? What are we doing if we're not helping our fellow man? I'm sorry. To everyone who became a patron over the weekend, I just don't have it in me to do a patron party today. I will most certainly give you a shout out tomorrow. Or what I'll do is somewhere in this full episode, I'm going to make the whole episode public. Somewhere in this full episode, the vibe will change and I'll get a moment to be able to thank you all. So for now, let me just drop this closing music and reset. And but check on somebody, man. Check on somebody. Make sure that there's nobody in your orbit who is marginal, who doesn't have a place to stay. Because for some people, $100 would save their lives. For some people, $100 will save their lives. I know because I've been in that situation. So check on somebody. Check on somebody.
The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.patreon.com/The BPD Show and support The Benjamin Dixon Show. If you like this episode, be sure to share, like, and subscribe.
All right, everybody's still tuned in. Live show still going on. Patrons, thank you for allowing this. From time to time, patrons reach out to me and say, Ben, you got to make this public. So I'm going to just pull it with this one. This one is going to be public. One, because this thing about Toya Man is really hurting me. And me, it ain't about me. But it's the humanity of it all, bruh. It is the inhumanity of it. It is the inhumanity at so many different levels of a system that will fail us, will fail the most vulnerable, right? Fail the most vulnerable. Her case represents the inhumanity that is waiting and lurking behind every single door. I'm starting. And y'all know me, like my patrons know me well. Y'all know that at the core of me, it is about our humanity and our compassion and our love for each other. And so when you see Toyan's story, I can't pronounce her full name. My guess would be that she's Nigerian. Just because of the name, I know quite a few Olus who are Nigerian, but that's irrelevant. I'm sorry, I'm just thinking out loud. But just to see the many points where society failed her, where the community failed her, where justice failed her. I mean, there's just so many where basic humanity failed her. There are people amongst us. I don't care. They are black. They are white. They are male. They are predominantly male. Let's just be real about that. They are predominantly male, but there are some predator women. And I'm not just talking about sexual predators. I'm talking about women who would break and be cruel. I asked last week, just on a brief tangent to help you understand what's in my head. I want to show you what's in my head so you can understand why I'm saying what I'm saying. I was reading about the Black Hole of Calcutta. It's a story of prisoners, of about 125 prisoners being jammed into a space that was big enough for about 5 prisoners. So 120 some odd people jammed into a space for about 6, and they were scratching and crawling, trying to survive. And as a result of reading that, it reminded me of the human pyramid that detainees were forced into, that human beings that America liked to call detainees were forced into, as a torture technique, right? You had bodies dog piled on top of each other, creating a human pyramid. And as I started researching that, because I had forgotten about it, at the center of that was a woman. It was a woman soldier smiling, taking pictures with human beings that they would refer to as detainees, so that they could dehumanize them and justify their actions. And I looked at that and I'm like, how? I understand context. Like, I mean, in context of history, I've seen so many plentiful examples of men being barbaric predators, monsters who would brutalize, kill, maim, destroy, plunder, rape, and destroy humanity for the sake of their own indecency and their own pleasure. And so, but I was shocked to see that it was a woman soldier, a woman who was doing the human pyramids with people, otherwise known as detainees to the American government. I want to bring that up because it's not something, it's something wrong with humanity. It is something wrong with humanity that is able to infect every race. You're not a better person because you're black. You're not. You're not a better person because you're Hispanic. You're not less inclined to be a predator because you are a Hispanic man, a black woman. There is a propensity to predation in all people. The problem is that we have created a society that excuses the predation of men. Just like I always talk about this society rewarding the greed, right? Like, what kind of twisted society do we have that we reward the greed of mankind, of humankind? Like, we take the very worst in humanity and we celebrate it and we reward it. And so we've created this twisted society that takes the absolute worst in humanity. It rewards it. And in most cases, it excuses it. Not in most cases, in like damn near all cases. What I'm talking about. Like, we make so many excuses about the predatory nature of men and mankind. For there to be predators, there have to be prey, which means that we have an entire segment of our civilization that is left vulnerable to the predatory nature of men. Just like we have a whole segment of society that is vulnerable to the greed of mankind. I mean, look at our society. What have we done? We've created a society that excuses, that justifies, that incentivizes, that creates content, videos, movies, music centered around the predatory nature of men, excusing it, justifying boys will be boys, right? And then we've created a society that excuses and rewards the greed of mankind. Somewhere said a group of people and decided when they were deciding to order our civilization, the very best that they could come up with was this: where the most vulnerable are preyed upon by predators. And this is what we have to fix. This is what we're fighting to fix. We're not only fighting to bring down the economic predators, we have to bring down the sexual predators. We have to bring down people who would look at the most vulnerable and see an opportunity versus seeing people who should be helped and given an opportunity. Yeah. In some unexpected good news, you don't get that often in this era that we live in this timeline that we live in. But in a historic win with a large majority, the Supreme Court rules it's illegal to fire employees for being gay or trans. Now, for those of you who may not have been paying very close attention to this, it has long been permissible in many states that did not have this on the books for state law. It has long been possible for you to be fired simply for being gay in a lot of states. And so this was a very significant victory for the for everybody, but specifically for the LGBTQ community in a 6-3 opinion written by Justice Neil Gorsuch. Surprise, surprise, the pick of Donald Trump, which is going to make a lot of folks going to be upset about this right here, because they figured Donald Trump's picks were going to absolutely, and when I say folks, I mean conservatives, evangelicals are going to be upset about this because they believe that they were getting people who would continuously chip away at the rights of the LGBTQ community, right? So the opinion was written by Neil Gorsuch. The court holds that Title VII prohibits all discrimination because of sex, including against people who are gay or transgender. I'm going to read briefly from the Daily Beast. Reporter Jay Michelson says following: a historic win for the LGBTQ community. The Supreme Court ruled 6-3 that firing someone for being gay or trans violates Title VII of the Civil Rights Act. Writing for the court, Justice Neil Gorsuch, a Trump nominee who had been promoted by the right-wing Federalist Society, wrote the opinion, which Chief Justice John Roberts and 4 liberal justices joined. He wrote that, quote, an employer who fires an individual for being homosexual or transgender fires that person for traits or actions that would not have questioned in members of a different sex. 3 cases were consolidated into a single opinion. Bostock versus Clayton County was about the firing of Gerald Bostock. Forgive me, I'm sure I'm pronouncing that wrong. After his employer, an agency of Clayton County, Georgia, found out he played in a gay softball league. Okay, that's it. Moments like this, you feel like, okay, hey, maybe, just maybe there's some hope. Maybe there's some kind of, there's a way to some liberation through the system. Don't worry, I'm not that optimistic. We'll talk about how that probably is not going to work, and we're going to have to take to the streets, continue to take to the streets. But for now, I think it's okay for us to revel in a victory that was gotten through the system, a rare victory. But it is good to see that that now states can no longer allow for people to be fired simply because they were gay, lesbian, or transgendered or bisexual. All right. On that high note, Let's have a patron party.
Go to www.patreon.com/The BPD Show and get twice the content and unfiltered interviews without any of the commercial interruptions.
And here we go. At this point in every single episode, I'd like to take a minute to thank the people who give me the ability to speak truth to power, whether the powerful like it or not, our patrons. Welcome aboard to Viral Thought, Rich Dolan, Rachel Davis, Jonathan Cope, Lizzie, Joshua, Mute 9624, Ryan Muller, Rohan Esteban, Bounce. Welcome to Flora, Benjamin George Daniels, Patrick Is Good, Jacqueline Body, Randall Holm, Jonathan Spence, Brett P, Alex Williams, Samantha Carmen, Michael Swerko, Steph Olmstead, Maya Victoria Medina, Christopher G, Rachel K, Josh Lorman, Kate Hinky, Megan, Nightfire 19, Jose Tinaco, Mike Rizal, Rory Levy, Michael Edward Gustavin, and Carl Zoloff. Thank you all for becoming patrons. You too can join this prestigious and prodigious family of patrons by going to patreon.com/The BPD Show. Twice the content, none of the commercials, and give me the ability to speak truth to power, whether powerful like it or not.
Welcome back to The Benjamin Dixon Show. Visit us online at thebenjamindixonshow.com.
Yeah. Yep. Break. Yeah. Welcome back, everybody. Whew. Man, let me tell you something. A couple things. Like, listen, sometimes it takes a little while to get out of the sadness of these stories. These stories really weigh on you. The news from the Supreme Court actually lifted my spirits. I'm excited about that. And I'm glad we were able to thank all of our newest patrons. Here's the deal. We are actually going to have real patron parties this Friday night, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I am passing out a Zoom link to all of our patrons to come to our party. Now, we started it with my birthday party 2 weeks ago, and we had such a good time. Patrons came to the birthday party, and friends and family came to the birthday party, and we danced the night away. I had a DJ in there, and we all just kind of danced and talked and drank, and it was as good as you can expect in the quarantine. So if you want to get access to the actual patron party, like we're going to party from 9 to midnight. I'm providing the DJ. If you guys want to tip the DJ, that's your business. You don't have to tip the DJ. You're already a patron, so I'm going to take care of the DJ. But you guys come on out and just kind of party with me, and let's just have a good time. Real patron party. Friday night, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. All right, so let's go back to the stories that are hitting today. There's still a lot of argument over whether or not we should defund or reform the police. And I've covered this quite extensively, but I just wanted to make something very clear. All right, one of the most important jobs I think I have one of the most important jobs. Right? Obviously, I do. I think everybody thinks that they're special, right? And it's cool. Everybody thinks what they do is important. I think what I do is important in that one of my jobs is to push the Overton window, is to push it left, to bring some equilibrium to the force, if you would, right? Right now, we have this country is all of the talking points that we hear in the media are centered, are based in right-wing framing, right? Whenever the Democratic Party, right? Whenever the Democratic Party debates, the media asks questions that are inherently right-wing. Our country has been on a rightward shift for a very long time. And our job, my job, is to push that envelope, that Overton window, as far left as we possibly can. I know one of the main problems that we have is that we have Democrats who like to triangulate, but as they triangulate, they are triangulating from a position that is already right-leaning. So as they triangulate from the right, we go further right. We've been seeing that since Jimmy Carter, but specifically, definitely your boy Bill Clinton. We got that from Barack Obama. Obamacare is a right-leaning piece of legislation, and we're definitely getting those vibes, serious vibes from Joe Biden. Our job as rabble-rousers, my job in this media thing that I do, and what I do on Twitter, probably more effectively on Twitter because the reach is pretty, goes a lot further than the podcast reach. But it is to challenge this system. You cannot challenge this system by being afraid to push the envelope. You cannot challenge the system by starting from a position of capitulation. You can't. You see, it just doesn't work. You cannot challenge America to actually do the right thing by saying, let's reform the police. We've been talking about reforming the police since before I was born. The police have been a problem in this country for generations, and people have been talking about reforming the police for equal amount of time. And so it is a non-starter. It is starting from a position of weakness. It is starting from a position of capitulation. It is starting from a position guaranteeing that the police will not change their ways if we go in with this mealy-mouthed negotiation technique of starting from something that's comfortable for the police. For example, Nancy Pelosi is discussing having the police unions have a seat at the table in these discussions. That is from a position of weakness. The police unions are hate organizations. They foster and foment as much hateful rhetoric as any Klansman I've ever seen. If you want to see Klansmen on full display, go see a police union president. All right? And yet the Democratic Party is starting from a position of saying, let's have them at the table. So if the Democratic Party is starting from that position, that means that they are going to, and they are rejecting. Let me paint the whole picture before I give the conclusion. If the Democratic Party is inviting the police unions to the table, but they are rejecting people from the table who are calling to abolish the police, how can you have a balanced conversation? How can you triangulate anything other than something that is in favor of the police when you don't have the full spectrum on the table? Which is why I'm surprised you have so many people who are in these same streets as I am. I'm not a politician. Don't aspire to be one. I used to aspire to be one, but I realized how much full of shit they all are. Sorry to even those that I like, right? I'm not a politician. My job is to not come out here and be and sound and look presentable, civil, and reasonable, especially when I know that we're dealing with unreasonable people. My job is to call bullshit when I see it, and I see bullshit in Nancy Pelosi and the Democratic Party bringing the police unions to the table, but not bringing abolitionists to the table. Sit them at the, if you want to see what a real triangulation is about, if you want to see what it is, if you want to see what real negotiations are, bring people to the table who are calling for the abolition of prisons, prisons too, but the abolition of the police force and the police unions. If you're not going to have the abolitionists at the table, then you should not have the police unions at the table, period. But that's not the starting position of the Democrats. The Democratic starting position is bring the unions to the table, and we're not even considering abolition or defunding. Now, you tell me how that math works out. If on average, we continue to capitulate and triangulate with people who are far right, with police unions, but we refuse to listen to people on the left who are calling for the abolition of the police, then how can we get anything except more concessions for the police? One of my biggest regrets is not having a black media organization in this moment, a well-funded black media organization. We almost had one, almost doesn't count. In this moment, I was talking to some friends and I'm like, how powerful it would have been to have a media organization that had black reporters in every city. They had the funding to make sure that reporters were at every protest, covering every protest, because of the significance of the moment. We almost had that, and it hit me this morning. I'm like, God damn it, we were really close to building that, but we didn't. And I'm talking around it because of obvious reasons. If you don't know the obvious reasons, whatever. I can't tell you a whole lot more. But what I will say is that there's still a need, because one of the biggest challenges that we have in our fight for liberation is a significantly funded black media institution that is rooted in liberation versus representation. Man, I just be talking some shit, and then when I'm done with the sentence, I'll be like, hot damn, that was a good sentence. No, we seriously need need multiple. Like, and this is the thing about it. Like, one thing I'm excited about in this moment, in this movement, is that there's no singular leader. That's a good thing. I'm glad we don't have one person who's the leader of this, because that leaves us vulnerable to losing that leader, and it also leaves us constrained, right? I talked about it last week. I'm super excited about the fact that leadership in this revolution has been democratized, and it needs to remain that way. So similarly, even with media, right? Even with a black media outlet, like it would be great if we had a very strong one or multiple strong media outlets, black media outlets that represented the liberation movement of black people, which is inherently tied to the liberation of all people. We don't have that black media organization. Most of the black media we have is they're the few and far and in between independent media outlets. You know, you got Roland Martin, my guy, a friend of mine. He has Roland Martin Unfiltered, and that, you know, then there's Tim Black and me. There's not a lot of, platforms that leverage their power for liberation. There are black media outlets that leverage their power for media, for other types of media. This is not to slam any media outlet, but media that is focused and centered on liberation and not just representation. Because representation doesn't bring liberation. Representation says that if we have a ruling elite, we want a diverse ruling elite. That's not what we need. We need to get rid of the ruling elite. You understand what I'm saying? And if we have media that's centered on representation only, then it won't address the underlying issues, the economic problems, the critical problems of the working class, for which so many black people are members of. But in our media, we don't discuss black people as working class. We continue to exacerbate the divide between the working class, between races, right? We make the working class seem as if it's inherently white, and we separate black people out of it, because if black folks and working class white folks, if working class black folks and working class white folks got together, then we would give the ruling elite of this country a hell of a problem. And one of the problems, one of the stumbling blocks in that math and that calculus ever being executed is the fact that we either don't have black media at all, or the black media that we have is focused on whatever they focus on in other. I'm not downing other verticals of media. We need media of all types, not just political and activist media. That's cool if you don't cover that. But even in the spaces that we do have, we have very little black media that focuses on liberation of all people, especially economic liberation. And this was the moment for us to have it, bruh. This was the moment to have reporters on the ground. And I can't say a whole lot other than forgetting those things which are behind. We're going to look forward to the future, and we're still going to do that. There was a vision that I had, and it's still going to come to pass. That's all I got to say, because it's a critical component. It's not about self-aggrandizement. It's not about building wealth for myself or for other people. It is literally about playing a role in the history of our present to make sure that we have all of the pieces in play for the liberation of all mankind. And I still firmly believe that one of those pieces that is missing is strong, liberation-centered black media that would tell the stories of people, of average, ordinary people, working class, black people, people who are living paycheck to paycheck, people who are waiting in line, people who are essential workers right now. Where are the stories of the black essential workers? Where are the stories of the black essential workers? Those are the stories that need to be told, uplifted, and amplified, because if you listen to my show any amount of time, you should understand that there is an inherent link. There is a direct link between the liberation of black people and the liberation of all people. Yeah. All right. I think that's about it. That's not a pitch for you to become a patron, but I will promise you every dime that you send to me as a patron is going to be working towards that end. Slowly but surely. Yeah. Not as fast and not as glamorous as before, but we'll get there. We'll get there. Thank you, everybody, for being a beautiful audience. I will see you tomorrow. Holla.